Good morning. We'll call this meeting to order. It is June 11th, 8:30 a.m. I would like to open up the meeting and call up Bishop Michael Siss for our prayer. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Let's pray. Lord God, we praise you in all your works. All that we have comes from your providential hand. We thank you for the gifts of life, love, family, and community.
And for the precious gift of rain that you sent us. We ask you to send your blessing upon this meeting and guide the work of the directors of our Economic Development Corporation. We ask you to give them wisdom, good judgment, creativity, and vision to seize opportunities for our future. Please bless our city. Give our people a spirit of cooperation and civic pride. Help us to seek constructive solutions to the challenges we face. To those who are going through hard times, give them hope and perseverance. And to those who are unemployed, help them to find dignified work, to put food on the table for their families. Help us all to break down barriers and to build bridges of trust. Give our young people a future full of hope. Help us to enhance the beauty and the safety of our surroundings. Bring health and well-being to your people. Trusting in your providential care, we place these needs in your merciful hands, and we ask you to hear us through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Bishop. With that, we'll go ahead and move into public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have any, Nora?
Actually, no one else, but I would like to make an announcement.
Sure.
So, business plan has kicked off. So in case if you were approached about that, send those individuals my way. Myself or Desiree Johnson with ASU SBDC will be more than happy to give them that information. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll go ahead and move to the consent agenda. Item A, considering approving the regular and workshop meeting minutes for May 28th, 2025. And B, consider authorizing the board president to sign a non-binding letter in support of the City of San Angelo's 2025 Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation project. Have any questions on the consent?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Director Lewis, second by Director Rodriguez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll go ahead and move into the regular agenda. Item A, discussion regarding the West Texas Partnership, presentation by Shane Kelton.
Matt Shirley had to bring my coffee, I hadn't I? Still working on it. Thank y'all. Just kind of start off with, I guess, a brief history. I'm not real sure y'all's familiarity with everything, and so tell you as much as I know. This started, the West Texas Water Partnership started back in 2010, Michael-ish, somewhere kind of back in that time frame. So
With Harold and Alvin. Alvin New and Harold.
Yeah.
Dominguez.
Yeah. So it was quite a ways back. The actual beginnings of it, and of course, it was a partnership between Midland, Abilene, and San Angelo to look out and try to source long-term water for the region, for our communities. in the region, thinking that the synergy of all three groups would do better than an individual city or municipality going out and trying to find the source, especially with the costs of sourcing water, not only one, just to find it, but then two, to purchase it and or figure out how to acquire it. And then once you do that, get it to the communities for its available use. And so with that, we took off on it was about a 10-year trek, searching the countryside, looking at all sorts of different, whether it was aquifers or it was maybe looking at brackish water supply sources, looking at even building of lakes, those type of things. They looked at all kinds of different things as a part of this partnership, trying to find long-term water solutions for the city. And not only us, but again, for the region itself, for this West Texas region. So after that culmination, they had looked at the Edwards Trinity, which in the Fort Stockton Holdings water. It had been brought to their attention through the process over the years. However, at the time, there was not a permit. They did not have a permit to export that water out of the county and off of the ranch at that point. So they finally went through all of the legal hurdles and the legal battles that it took to get to that point. And once they reached that and they had that ability to permit it, the transport of that water outside of the county, then that's when the cities in the partnership really took notice of the Fort Stockton Holdings water and were able to negotiate and secure a contract for that water in 2010 or in 2020. So in May of 2020 is when we were able to actually secure that. The contract is actually between Fort Stockton Holdings and the city of Midland. We are basically we have an agreement. The city of Abilene and the city of Sanangelo have agreements with the city of Midland for that water. We've actually contracted. The contract amount with Fort Stockton Holdings is for 28,400 acre feet of water. That's the total amount of the entire contract. Between that, it was kind of split off by need of each municipality. City of Midland getting 15,000 acre feet of water. City of Abilene getting 8,400 acre feet of water, and then the city of Sanangelo at 5,000 acre feet of water. It's in the contract, it's a take or pay contract. So currently we are in the process, and since the contract was implemented, or signed and executed, we have been making payments. Our current payment is $558,019.84 a year for the city of Sanangelo. That will be good out until 2030, and in 2030 we see an increase. It'll bump up to $896,090.25 per year. And then every year after that, for the 50-year term of the contract, it will bump up about 2 3/4 pennies per 1,000 gallons of water. So in the next year, 2031, the payment would go up to $900,570, and then every year, so incrementing on up every year after that. So that's kind of the background and where we are today and what we've done. We have, Midland did have a significant amount of turnover, not only in their council, but in their staff as well. Since the signing of the contract, they're on their third city manager. They're on their third water director, so utility director. So again, they've had a lot of turnover there. So the process has kind of slowed down. We have been, as we were coming into this, right before this legislative session, we were looking at going out for our phase 1 approach, looking at starting the development of the well field out at Fort Stockton. Of course, as we were coming into the legislative session, we, with Senator Perry's, all of the water bills that he brought forward, we were kind of waiting to see what, from a funding perspective, that they were going to bring forward it through the state legislative session and kind of what that would look like. moving forward. There are some particular grant monies through the Texas Water Development Board that may be applicable to what we're trying to do here in our phase one approach. They have a grant that can go up to $135 million. So that's a significant grant. So we wanted to make sure that how that was going to play out. And then, of course, with the presidential elections and the freezing of a lot of federal monies at the initial start of it, that kind of put brakes on a lot of things, especially when we start looking at grant dollars that are federally funded as well. As we're kind of coming out of the legislative session and we're seeing how things are shaking out and what's going to hopefully be available, the grant dollars, and all of those things from the federal side are starting to ease up. We're starting to see those things come back into play, and so we're starting to move forward again as we're coming out of it. So phase one, kind of what we're planning on the phase one approach, we're hoping to go out for an RFQ this late summer, fall, kind of as all these things start shaking out, and we kind of figure out if grant monies are really going to be applicable to the situation. The grant that we were looking at for $135 million is for its development of brackish water, and technically the Edwards Trinity water that we're looking at could be considered somewhat brackish because of the suspended solids that are in the water. We're over 1,500 parts per million, which technically makes it brackish. It's really not. It's plenty drinkable use for agriculture uses and all that, but from the technical aspect it is, so we're hoping we can ease in on that technicality for the grant dollars. So if not, we're still planning on moving forward. So again, looking at phase one, we're wanting to get in there. Phase one, we'll start looking at all of the logistics of it, looking at well placement, where all the wells need to be placed across the ranch for us to be able to acquire the 28,400 acre feet of water, and then start looking at pumping stations, start looking at pipeline alignment, all of the things, treatment locations. Where are we going to treat the water? Are we going to treat the water there, or are we going to treat the water in Midland? Where are we going to treat the water? Where's the best place for that? So that'll be part of the phase one. And then we also want to get in there in phase one, and we want to drill 1 or 2 wells. We want to go ahead and apply for the permits, get the wells, because we're almost assuredly going to we're going to be sued, and we're going to have to fight lawsuits for the first probably year. Anytime you start drilling water to move water outside of a county, it becomes highly contentious, and so we actually have another resident of the county, the Cockrells, another fairly wealthy family out there that owns quite a bit of land, does quite a bit of irrigation with the Edwards Trinity water, and they've been throwing wrenches at everything they can. So, and we fully expect to see opposition out of this, and lawsuits will arise, and so we will. And again, we'll have to work through all of that as we're moving along. Not that they will be successful. Again, it's just another hurdle that we're going to have to jump and move through. So, but again, just kind of go ahead and start testing the waters, get that done, get the first 1 or 2 wells drilled, get them cased, and start again once we get our straws in the ground. That just helps build any further cases moving forward from any opposition, whether that's environmental groups, which we do have an environmental group out of Austin that has been not necessarily a champion of this project either. So again, as we're moving forward, we expect a few hurdles in that, but again, still working through those processes. And then we'll move on, once we kind of get that initial phase done, we'll move on to phase 2, which will be full development of the well field itself and the pipeline, and then in the treatment facility. And then phase 3 will be and phase 2 and 3 will be kind of the same thing, working together. However, at that point in time, the cities are going to work together to determine how the logistics of how this water is going to work. How are we going to work with the city of Midland, either one, to get that water from Midland to here, or are we going to basically trade water rights with them? They can use our 5,000 feet, and we can use 5,000 acre feet of their Lake Ivy rights. That type of thing, looking at the logistics of that, and that'll be worked out kind of as a separate phase as we're working through the process to actually get that water to be able to be produced and to be able to utilize it. So that's kind of where we are right now, kind of short and sweet, but any questions?
I got a couple, just trying to wrap my head around the finances. So that the money we're paying in now, we're banking that water, I assume. We're gonna get that water at some point, 1,000.
It's not a bankable, this is not bankable water like
the
the
558
Hickory.
just goes away?
It's take or pay, I mean, it's the take or pay scenario, so.
And then the second piece of that, if Midland gets 15 times the water that we do, are they paying 15 times the amount?
Correct. It is, all of the, as we're developing all of this and as all of this is going out, it will be, the payments will be proportional to the water that we are receiving. So it is.
So like how many years, if everything worked as you hoped, how many years is it till water flows?
Till water flows, 4 years probably.
All right, so that's not too bad. But we're gonna be, so we're millions in by the time we
Yes.
start getting water.
Yes. It's much like the Hickory was a lot of the same way. We paid water rights for years and years and years. And now, of course, back then, water was pennies on the dollar as it is compared to today. But again, it's the same thing. Now, through the litigation and all of the things that we went through with the Hickory side, the water banking was a portion of that. And so we were able to bank water with the Hickory, but this is not the same contract and not the same situation in Fort Stockton.
So who are we paying this to? The Fort Stockton Water Holdings?
Yes,
Like a private entity that owns these water rights?
Yes, yeah. The money is currently being placed in escrow in case something does happen to the export permit, in case there is something that happens through legislation or something that happens through litigation or any other things, anything that could jeopardize this contract or our contract with Fort Stockton Holdings and our ability to draw water out of that aquifer there. That water is being held in escrow and will be returned to us minus legal fees and some other things like that. But until we start actually taking water and we actually start pumping water to the cities, that money is being held in escrow until then.
So how big, just trivial stuff, how big's the footprint of the surface out there that we own the water right, or how big, is it one ranch, multiple owners?
It is one ranch,
Okay.
and I do not know the acreage of the ranch, but it's large.
Okay. Is there what's the relationship like with the surface owner on this that the water rights are?
It's owned by Fort Stockton Holdings and
They
the
own
ranch.
they own the surface?
Yes, it's.
Okay.
It's Clayton Williams' family,
Okay, yeah.
so.
Yeah, okay.
Do you see anything in the legislation that Senator Perry was working on that was a wrench to any of this?
Not really. Of course, it was one of those things to try to see where Senator Perry's heading with his grand overall plan for state water and to see how that would affect this. Because if you look at some of the plans that he created, there's pipelines coming out of that West Texas region, bringing water back into the central or this portion, West Central Texas, and even up in towards the Panhandle. And so there's also, he's looking at also basically his concern is new water. I mean, he's really looking at salt water, whether that's desalinization of ocean water, whether that's, brackish water coming out of far West Texas or New Mexico. He's looking even water out of Arkansas. He's even looked at water coming out of Arkansas. I mean, so there's lots of different things that he's been looking at to bring water into the state. And we want to make sure that, one of the things that we were concerned about is we don't want to do something that's just you don't want basically put our pipeline and their pipeline in the same ditch. We could use if we use the same pipeline type thing. So it's one of those things that, just kind of letting that unfold to see what's going on there, how much traction Senator Perry was going to get in this legislative session. He did get some traction in this legislative session. I don't think he got, excuse me, I don't think he got what he was looking for. Well, I know he didn't get what he was looking for, what he was asking for, but he did get some traction in there. So Again, I think his plan is going to continue moving forward, but nowhere near the pace that we need for our project to move forward. So I believe that we're going to go ahead and start moving forward, excuse me, even ahead of what any state water plan would look at, so.
That's good. Appreciate the presentation. Jay, are there
No problem.
any more questions from anyone?
I have a couple of questions. So the payments that we're making are going directly to the West Texas Water Partnership. Are there any costs associated with the partnership itself that we're participating in?
Well, right now, the payments are actually going to Fort Stockton Holdings.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
I'm
Fort
sorry.
Stockton Holdings.
Fort Stockton
So,
Holdings, yes.
And with that, they do have the use of those funds for any other legal work, legal challenges, which there have been a few, again, with neighboring landowners, basically, and some other political folks. So they do have some expenses, minor, but we do get to, all of the city managers do get to review their expense reports that they send in, and basically, if we want to challenge any of those, we can.
Okay.
But they're minimal. They're for the most part, the expenses that they've been charging to that account are, again, they're quite minimal, so.
But there are no costs really associated with the partnership itself at this point?
No, but as we
borne by
get,
Fort Stockton from-
as we get into this fall, late
Yeah.
summer, fall, and we start the RFQ process, then that's where the cities are going to have to actually start making, spending city dollars
Yep.
to get this project moving forward, so.
Okay. Well, it's an exciting project. It's,
Yeah. It really is. I mean, when we look at it, when we talk about long-term water in the city of Sanangelo, but
And it's important.
it hasn't been that long that I was worried about near-term water. So,
Yeah.
so we're, again, in the last decade, we've placed the city of Sanangelo in a lot better position than we've ever been in before. Just relying strictly on surface water. Now that we have the Hickory, and we're able to pump out of the Hickory and bring that water into town, again, I breathe a lot easier at night, so, or sleep a lot better. So, it's one of those that, when you're completely, I mean, we've been down to 12 months twice in the last decade, so, of water.
Yeah.
So, and when you start having those type of scenarios where you're trying to figure out how you're going to keep water flowing in our distribution systems to get to the homes, and we're talking about bringing water in on trains and things like that, and all kinds of different scenarios. Having these supplies and these things in place is just critical. Not only just for long-term water supply, but again, I think, out here in West Texas, near-term water supply becomes an issue from time to time, so.
Yep.
Shane, is the 500,000 that's going to escalate over the next years, is all of that funding coming from the allocation, the ballot of the asset sales tax, or is there any of this funding coming out of the water fund?
Currently, right now, it is coming out of the ballot initiative, so.
Are there any plans as the field development occurs that any might be bore by, the water fund, the water utility fund?
As we start development of that, one well is going to be a little over $1 million. So that's just to drill the hole in the ground, so encase it. So yeah, it's going to take a combination of funding as we get started moving forward. So, and especially when we start getting into the phase 2, when we really start getting into that construction, right now we have it projected at a little over $800 million for the entire project. If you go by Texas Water Development Board's numbers, it's a little over $1 billion. So it's going to be significant dollars as we get into the true development of this project. So
You mentioned that you anticipated that there could be litigation once wells are drilled. Is there any current pending litigation with the partnership?
Not with the partnership itself. Fort Stockton Holdings, Middle Pecos Groundwater District, and the Cockrells, there's some litigation between all of those groups currently going on, but nothing with the partnership itself.
Okay. How long has that litigation been going on?
Some of it for quite some time, for 3 or 4 years now. Even 1 or 2 cases, even a little longer than that. And of course, it is moving up through the court system. So again,
Good old court system.
how it works. So yeah. So.
Okay.
Perfect. Any other follow-up questions? Everybody good? Thank you, Shane. That's valuable information.
Yeah, thank you, Shane.
Appreciate the
Thank you.
transparency.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item B. Consider a resolution authorizing the COSADC Board President to evaluate and provide written non-binding support for grant-related infrastructure projects or request for other non-binding support at the discretion of the Board President that provide opportunities or catalysts for economic development in the city of San Angelo.
Good morning, Michael Daney, Interim Economic Development Director. We've had 2 agendas in a row where we had an item authorizing the board president to sign a letter of support. We think as long as that's non-binding, that's some authority we can delegate without any hassle, and rather than wait on the agenda, which occurs once a month, and clutter that agenda with the authorization, we think that it'd be suitable for the board to delegate that authority to the president. That's what this item proposes to do.
And so for clarification, non-binding, no financial commitments, just strictly a letter of support coming from this board.
Right. And Shane's group has gotten much more aggressive about applying for grants. They've had some success, and they like it. They like that free money. So we're on their call list when they get ready to apply to get a letter of support. And we're glad to support them.
Typically, these are pretty fast-moving processes.
It can be.
We don't want to hold that up.
The whole grant process typically doesn't move that fast, but from when we discover the availability of the grant can be a short time frame. So
Right.
we do like to try to move quickly.
Perfect.
Move approval.
We got a motion to approve, Director Lassiter. Excuse me. Second from Director Rodriguez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Michael. We'll go into item C, discuss the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce agreement and review the budget. Presentation by Steve. You're up.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you. My name is Steve Elanius. I'm President and CEO of the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce, and I'm excited to be here to have this conversation with you. Obviously, economic development is something near and dear to not only my heart, but also Michael Looney and Mike Berry. I do want to make a comment about the Development Corp. What you guys do is critical to this community's success. And a lot of the projects that you're going to see start and in many ways end with what you decide. And so you're important to what happens in this community. And really, if you just start to look at the inflection point that we have and the momentum that's being built in this community, there's some really exciting things that are going to be happening, and you're going to be a big part of that. So I just want to affirm and encourage you in terms of what's going to be unfolding over the next 18, 24 months, that it's going to be exciting for San Angelo. Had the budget presentation sent to you. I'm not going to go into details of that in a great sense, but I want to hit a couple of key things that I think are really important. Number one, salaries. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've had a chance to watch Michael Looney and Mike Berry, and I will tell you, it is rare, and they are an outlier, that you have that type of talent together on a single team. And keeping them and making sure that they are fairly compensated and competitively compensated in terms of salaries is critical. And so that's why you see in the budget proposal such a dramatic increase in the salaries. I refer to them as the Tom Brady and the Bill Belichick of economic development. I don't know who's who, but they as a team, they are the X factor for this community, and we're very fortunate to have them and the role that they play, and it's unusual to have that amount of talent. And then the next part of it is the membership to the Texas Economic Development Corporation. We have not belonged to that in a number of years. It is the premier economic development group in the state. I think it's important for San Angelo to be a part of that and to be engaged with the Texas Economic Development Corporation because they do a wide variety of activities and events. And if you can imagine turning Michael Looney loose on the state of Texas and the amount of things that he can get done, I think is important. And being at the table and being part of the conversation and having that top of the mind awareness that San Angelo is engaged and is serious about economic development, I think is really critical. The third element on this is travel and visibility. Obviously, there has been very little travel money budgeted, and I think it's important moving forward that, again, that we are present at these Texas Economic Development Corporation events, whether they're trade shows, whether they're meet and greet with site selectors, whether it's an international trade mission. I think there's some really great opportunities for our community, but we've got to be engaged. We've got to have those relationships, and we've got to be building those relationships. And I have all the confidence in the world that both Mike and Michael can do that and do it very successfully. And then the last element that I want to talk about or just mention in passing is the economic data and forecasting. And I think if there is a secret sauce that Mike Berry brings to the table, it's his ability to forecast and to take data information and convert it into something that can be used by the business community and our organization. And I think without making that, it looks like an expense, but really it's a key investment. And if you've heard conversations about economic gardening, but the whole economic gardening process really relies on data and data analysis. And what Mike Berry brings to the table is going to be impactful in terms of not only strategically how we position ourselves, but also where the opportunities are. So with that, I kind of hit the highlights. I would be happy to try to answer questions that you might have. I told both Michael and Mike I would do the easy questions and they could do the hard questions. So I'm open to anything or conversations that you'd like to have around the budget and what we're wanting to see happen. One other thing before we get to the questions, I put what we identified as kind of the key strategic industries that we want to pursue. And then also in the back there, key KPIs that I think are measurable, that are very doable for our community and for the economic development contract. So I want you to be comfortable in terms of kind of what the targets are and what the outcomes that we're going to measure with this contract. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Any questions from anyone?
I assume you're referring to the performance measures on that back sheet, and I think those are really good. And I'd like to see more of that, not on a regular basis, but in your kind of monthly reports, it'd be neat to see like the website traffic, for example. Like I wasn't aware you guys were maintaining the website. That's a nice feature.
Absolutely. And I think as an entity that contracts with us, I think that's something that we'll be able to produce on a regular basis. And it's being done already. It's just making sure that we're reporting in such a fashion that it's acceptable to you all.
Okay, the breakdown that you guys have provided is really good, and thank you for doing that. I agree with Lorenzo's point about the key performance indicators and the importance of that. Could we get your help understanding where the differences might lie between this proposal and the current agreement that we have with the chamber?
Well, the current agreement is for $262,000, so that's
Right.
all encompassing. We have a $90,000 contract with Tom Green County. So you have the 262 but the 90 plus the 90,000. So you could see in what I presented to you as a board, kind of where we use the county money to offset salaries and also database and some of the other items that we use for it.
Yes, sir.
But the opportunity comes where, in terms of, again, I want to go back to making sure that this team is compensated fairly.
Sure.
But then that we're also giving them the tools to go do the things in terms of selling San Angelo. So I can tell you, for example, with the database, the services that we had, that's currently at $44,100. So it's about a 49% increase. But it gives us a CRM database program that we don't have right now, and gives Mike additional data sources to do some analysis.
Okay.
And I think it makes us more competitive.
Okay. There's you mentioned the membership to the Texas Economic Development Corporation. We're not currently
We're
doing
not
that.
currently a member.
The business retention and expansion.
So part of that funding is what we do with SARMA right now. And then additional funding that we're requesting would be the business retention program, the visits, what I call the Focus on Business appreciation event or quarterly events. And I think those combinations gets us to a very healthy business retention program that both, is tracking and doing what I call the intelligence work in terms of what's going on with our existing industries. As you know, about 80 to 85% of your job growth comes from your existing businesses.
Yeah.
And so we just want to make sure that we're doing the things necessary to kind of show the love to the folks that are already here.
Yes.
And making sure that we are doing all those things necessary for them to be successful. I know Michael's already working with a current business industry that's here in terms of an expansion project. And part of that is just being able to have those relationships. And Michael's been able to make that happen because of the relationship that he's built over the last 2 years. Now imagine if we could do that on a much bigger scale, and a very focused effort in terms of what we're doing to build those relationships with key industries or employers.
Okay.
What does that membership cost, that annual cost?
That's you're talking about the Texas Economic Development,
Yes.
$25,000. And they have different levels, but that's one that we felt like it was a good initial step into it to see how it would, how we could benefit from it and how we could work it to our advantage.
I assume that's a deal where they put on a trade show and people from all over the country.
Trade
come,
shows,
looking at
site
Texas.
selectors, they do, for example, the governor's office just recently opened an office in Taiwan. So chip manufacturing, a lot of things that in terms of advanced manufacturing that we could go after. But we've got to be at the table and we've got to be engaged and we've got to actually take the trip to have those conversations.
I agree on that membership. I think that's extremely valuable. In fact, it'd be nice to do that now.
Yeah, that actually is a great segue into my next question. The current contract that's in place expires, I believe, at the end of this year. And so it's our fiscal year and the contract expiration are not aligned presently. Yes.
Well, just to interrupt, you're right on that, but there is also an option to further extend it for one more year at the option of you guys, so.
Got its current rate.
Existing contract.
Yeah, the existing contract, that's
existing
right.
contract.
Yeah.
Do
That's
we
an
have-
amendment we did, where we extended the term and also kind of revised the performance measures, so.
Do we have the ability to renegotiate the contract before it expires and have a new term that would perhaps
think you could-
co-align with the city's fiscal year?
Yeah, I think you could do another amendment. Of course, the chamber would also have to agree to that, but.
Would the chamber be open to as a part of this and helping with the budgeting process to redo the contract and have it start instead of January 1 of next year, try to have it start October 1 of this year?
Absolutely, we'd make it work.
Steve, I do have a question. So the increase that you're asking, I just want to be sure I'm on my math. It's you're proposing an increase of 262,500 to $587,800.
That is correct, yes, sir.
So that's an increase of $325,345.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing in your current budget?
I will tell you, Mike and Michael do a fantastic job of stretching the dollars. They have bootstrapped this thing for Michael's been here 11 years now. He has bootstrapped this thing for all those years, and has been surprisingly successful with limited resources. And I think what excites me about is I think we're entering into that moment where there's going to be some really big announcements coming if we can just make it happen. And so I think I'm a big believer in momentum, and it's easier to ride the momentum than try to push the rock up the hill. And I think this is one of those opportunities for our community that we can make a serious investment. And understand, you're looking at, you look at comparable cities, a lot of them either have a type A corporation or a type B corporation. All their money typically goes for economic development, so their budgets are much bigger in what they're able to do. This request of 587, I know Amarillo's marketing budget is 600,000, so we're not even, we're saying our entire budget outside of the contribution from the county is, 587, which I think can make us competitive. And I have all the confidence in the world that both Michael and Mike can make this thing work at the next level for us with this type of investment.
And another question, what increase are you requesting from the county itself?
Well,
when does that expire?
That's a great point. That's an ongoing conversation, and I'm Michael Looney has developed that relationship with them, and they have over the last several years have increased it at the tune of about $20,000 a year. And if that, again, everybody, every fiscal year is different for each governmental entity. But our hope is that as we go into those conversations that we could see another $20,000 bump from the county. And it could be more, again, but it's, you never know what you're going to get until you get it.
And you said that current rate was 40,000 from the county?
90,000.
90, I'm sorry, thank you.
What is your total budget, the chamber's total budget?
The total budget, counting DMO, the chamber, it's a little bit over $2 million, right, Mike? Yeah, it's about 2.1.
So we would make up 25% of your budget, current budget?
Overall, that would be correct, but it's a contract. So just like with the DMO contract, there are certain deliverables. Those monies aren't mixed. And it's, by law, we can't mix those monies. And so I will tell you, this organization's done a good job of making sure that those monies stay in the right lanes that they're supposed to be in, and it's not abused. So I feel very confident that whatever we do in terms of the dollar amount, we'll be able to deliver it and be able to account for it and show where it's spent and how it's spent.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? So this is just a discussion item, so there'll be no action at this time. Steve, really appreciate the presentation. We may have follow-up questions at some point, but
we're here.
It's loud.
Again, I just want to stress, very excited about the partnership. You don't see this a lot in communities. A lot of times there's a lot of tension and disagreements. I want to say what we have here in San Angelo with the city, with the development court, with the chamber is a very good relationship. And I just want to, when they hired me, they said, don't screw this up. So my goal is to make sure that it works and that we continue working well together.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess I got a question is for point of order, Michael and Corbin. I mean, if we do want to make a recommendation to adjust the budget and adjust the contract, does that need to be put forward in a future agenda item, or is it addressed at the budget? Getting the The next item on the agenda is the budget. Okay. but that would be the budgeting part, but adjusting,
Yeah.
if we mutually agree to renegotiate the agreement, would that be a future agenda item?
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of the chicken or the egg.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. But no, you couldn't take action today to amend or approve a new contract with the chamber for that amount. So how you do that in the budget, I guess we'll have to see what Tina has to say, but.
Well, I would like to ask it to be put on an agenda, the next agenda, as a discussion and possible action regarding the contract.
Could we potentially budget for today and then renegotiate the contract in December? I mean, just renegotiate the contract between now and then, but budget for it now?
We could, I don't know, we'll let Tina,
Yes, you could.
or whether it's renegotiated in December or renegotiated to get, because I hear it's kind of a rub that it's a weird wonky thing. If we just get it lined up with the city's fiscal year, if it could get done, it could be actually put in the budget, start October 1. It would make sense then to get the contract done effective October 1. Then we just would be in sync with the city budget, right?
This is our final shot at the budget though, right? We got one more?
I like the idea of addressing it with the budget discussion, and it makes sense to align it with our fiscal year if we can. But even if we don't, the budget is going to be impacted by the decision we make on this agreement. Whether we roll it forward or make a change, we've got at least a partial year under an agreement that expires during the fiscal year.
The fiscal year part of it is not a major consideration from our standpoint. I think we're on a calendar year because that's where the chamber is. And it was an accommodation for them. And so if you want to alter this agreement, we can do it in whatever month you want it to happen, and we can make it work. But I think the current arrangement of being on a calendar year was rooted in that's where the chamber was, and it suited them. We can make whatever combination of months and years work that the board desires.
But the chamber would have no trouble if we wanted to go to an October 1. Okay.
Well, the other thing is that it doesn't have to be October 1. I mean, if you desire the activity sooner than that, I think what I heard was, we'll make it work. And that means if it's August 1, they can make that work too. It's just a question of our getting the approvals through the city council. And we can amend that current year budget if you amend the contract and get into this year, and we need to amend this year's budget to accommodate that, that can happen also.
Okay.
None of that, all that's the
We're
tail.
talking about the budget, so do you want to call that item?
Yes, we'll go ahead and move.
Well,
Yeah.
before you do, I just want to, but we do have the option the development corporation to extend this contract as is for 1 year.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And you can't extend it for 6 months, half the budget. If we're going to realign, I'm just asking for, edification purposes.
So, I mean, I think you could exercise your option to extend it, and then within that extended term, if you wanted to revise the agreement, do another amendment, you could certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you.
So since this was a discussion item, we'll move into the budget, which will maybe allow us to have a little more in-depth conversation. So we'll go ahead and move to item B, presentation and possible action regarding a proposed fiscal year 2026 COSADC budget. Presentation by Tina.
Thank you, Tina Deersky, Corporate Treasurer. This budget for the ballot side, just bringing back so that in case you had any questions after the last time you had the chance to look at it a couple weeks ago, nothing has changed for the ballot side at all on this slide. But so just like I said, in case you had any questions since the last meeting. And if not, we'll move on to the economic development side. There have been a couple of small, very small changes here. There was a change in
I'm,
the.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you mind going back to the ballot
Oh,
side?
absolutely, no problem.
So I know we've talked about, in long-term water supply, the West Texas Water Partnership, obviously. There are other projects, I think, that have been worked on and discussed, in addition to the West Texas Water Partnership. Is all that's budgeted for the next fiscal year just the West Texas Water Partnership obligations?
Yes, there's $200,000 there for West Texas Water Partnership itself, and then the other 558 is for the Fort Stockton water rights.
Could I add to that answer?
You can, oh, and the,
The
sorry, the debt
answer is
service.
also no. That when you get to the bottom, future projects, there's $4.6 million available that could be budgeted for something else.
Got it. Okay.
So,
Perfect. Thank you.
But I also want to just say that there's also $2.9 million in the debt service portion that goes towards debt service on long-term water supply. Don't want to leave that out. So,
Right.
But in that one line, that's what's there, so
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
if at some point you want a presentation about what those challenges are that Shane faces, from water supply and water transportation and delivery, treatment and delivery, that'd be a worthy topic, so that you would have that full perspective on the real, that's some real heavy lifting financially, and
Right.
it'd probably be a worthy topic at some
I'd
point.
be interested at some point.
I definitely. Yeah.
Us to hear. So can we put that on the agenda for a future item, for the next one or one after?
I think he's making the rounds and trying to get campaign contributions.
Okay, so on the economic development side, there have been a couple of slight changes in the administrative line, change of about $2,000. We had IT cost projections come in, and so we adjusted that in line with those. The COSADC staff line, there was a slight change we got in our TMRS rates, and so we adjusted that in accordance with that rate. And then in the city services line, we have a first rough draft of the indirect cost plan, and so we've put that in to that line, with causing an increase of almost $13.5 thousand. Other than that, there were no changes on this slide.
So Tina, is this where if we said we would like to amend the budget to reflect a change in the future chamber contract, is this where that would happen?
Yes. And so we could budget whatever you tell us to budget for now. We do have another meeting on July 9th, which will come before we go to city council with this budget. And so that would give you an opportunity to make another change if you wanted to do so, or to keep whatever amount you direct us to put in there today.
So if we make a change, it comes out of future projects. That's the wiggle room?
Yes, sir.
The other thing I'd like to discuss or maybe address as a board is the shared services agreement has the salaries for the development corporation included in that in that cost. And I know we've talked about having an interim director position and a salary that's considerably more than what we've been paying. I'd like to discuss maybe making some changes to the way that we're staffed and structured going forward as part of this budget discussion. I don't know if that's something you guys are interested in or not, but I think it makes sense.
Seems like the time to talk about it.
So Tina, how much, I know we're budgeting for a position we don't have filled right now, that is, whether we're calling it a COSADC executive director or perhaps that's a COSADC administrative manager. How much of that 380 do we have budgeted for that position that's not filled right now?
I think we have 125 plus benefits. So what total about? 161 including benefits. And like you said, right now we have 2 of 3 budgeted positions filled, and a small amount of that is going towards the interim economic development director for the current year budget.
But if the city filled that position, then we wouldn't have the interim allocation to the city manager's office.
That's correct.
That would come down or
Yes.
go away.
It would go away.
So there are 3 FTEs approved, so it's just determining what you want to do with that third.
Approved and budgeted,
And
yeah.
budgeted.
Mhm.
But you've got it budgeted to be an executive director, not an administrator title. Because if I remember right, last time, we didn't have enough budgeted if you were going to call him an ED. For the size of what we are, we're not sure we really need an ED on the COSADC side. And I think when we talked at the workshop, maybe it's more of a COSADC administrative manager. It's, it's still, it's like $125,000 targeted salary.
All that's true, and we may still try to title it as an executive director, but the real industry expertise associated with economic development, we discussed in the previous agenda item, that rests with our chamber personnel. And so if we try to hire somebody with that expertise, we're paying for expertise we're already paying for and getting.
Yep.
And so, and that raises the price. What the headhunter told us a couple of years ago was that that's $50,000 more than you have budgeted. And we just feel like that if we have this expertise, there's no need in paying for it twice. And if we can live lean and keep the money on the street where it pays returns, we felt like that was and that's as deep as it gets right there, is trying to keep things lean and keep the money where it pays returns. And so since we've got the expertise in the contract line, we really just need administrative horsepower in the staff line.
Well, I would agree. I think
that makes sense too.
It makes sense that that line item, and I don't know if it needs adjustment, because I think to get the type of administrative staff you need, you may, looking at some of those other jobs around the state, that's easily $100,000 to $125,000 a year type of position as an administrator, right?
That would put the job in an approximately equitable position with other lower level directors in the city. And it's probably a little low compared to other cities. We're facing the same thing that the chamber, that Steve just talked about, with comparison to other locations. And so it's probably reasonable. The unfinished, I guess, conversation is, do we try to lump that in the way it is now with an ACM sharing that duty? Or do we have a distinct person? There are benefits to both sides. With a separate person, you have more time and energy available to support your key staff, and that's a benefit. But somebody pointed out, having an ACM in the loop gives us a little more leverage sometimes. That's true also. And so I think I really don't think you can go wrong budgeting one way or another. I think we can, if we get down to time to make a change or time to do something, we can amend the budget and go from there. We can have those discussions. But the key is for you to have been thoughtful about how do we handle this and how do we respond. I think we're in a good place.
Well, one thing, we kind of need to be proactive about it, because the city could just fill that position with or without our desire or approval, right? So I think we're a little bit better off to make our decision in advance and present it that way.
Your input, I think, would have influence, but by, I think, contract and ordinance, that authority rests with Daniel.
Apparently not the original contract, but a modified contract along the way.
I think it's in the bylaws, isn't it? And
Amended bylaws. So originally, Matt brought this up, the original COSADC, we controlled the staffing, and no longer. That was taken away somewhere along the way.
Well, originally there was no staffing, so,
Well, that
but
simplifies things.
Well,
I think go ahead, man.
Well, I think from a budget standpoint, you, at the 38970, you have more than an adequate amount of funds available to hire a third FTE should the right candidate come along. The situation we have today is very good in that we've got a great assistant city manager that's filling that role at a fraction of the cost. So we're a win-win. We just need to know that may not always continue to work out at the city manager's office to assign you those duties, and the right candidate may come along that we could support and that city could support. But it's not to take away from, the other part is, I am all for adjusting the contract with the Chamber of Commerce as has been presented, because I think we've been way undercompensating the services that we need. But I also don't want to take away from, but we also need to be a good administrator on the administrative side of the house. This is a good time to go, if we're going to adjust, do we adjust one, adjust both? It's great we've got more than enough money budgeted on COSADC staff that we're not utilizing, but we're under budgeting what we're doing on the marketing with the chamber.
You do have some slack built in. If this current arrangement continues, you got approximately $140,000 worth of slack built into that line. And that can be reprogrammed, moved at some point to support activity in another line.
Which line is that?
The city staff or
Staff
COSADC staff. That's where the three.
Because of the unfilled position.
Right. And one of the things that Steve pointed out is that TEDC membership is expensive, but it is beneficial. And that's why I would like for this staff to be able to participate in that activity also. And so if we move down that road, we'll probably be looking to either piggyback or share that membership or something. I am, in my current role, very much administrative. Nora puts the meetings together, and that is kind of an administrative role, but it's one we can't escape. We've got state rules that we need to follow, and she tries to keep us on the straight and narrow. Bob helps out with everything under the sun. In fact, he has, I would bet that there are, I wouldn't say any other positions like his in the state where he understands both the economic development side and the, what do you call the development stuff, Bob? Land development side. And so that is very unique. So they both have emerged through their experience as adding value. They have conformed to the needs of the organization. And so for me, the concern is getting them adequate support so they can add value like they do on most days.
Well, I totally agree, and I think having a budget that has this third FTE that we've not filled is a good budget number personally. Whether, I think calling it an administrative managers or something similar, we can let the HR people figure that out. Because we need to get that person on board because, the elephant in the room is, we're not all going to be here. Some are going to retire or move on to the next career thing. And so it's really important we've got the funds budgeted and we have the willingness to hire and go out and hire the professionals we need to keep this running, not just next year, fiscal year, calendar year, whatever. I mean, we need to have a plan in place that this moves this things along. I'm comfortable with the 380 number, even though I know that there's a chunk of an FTE that we haven't hired. But if we put it in the budget and then we bark up the tree to the fourth floor and say, hey, we think we need to be looking and let's get this administrative position hired, because we're going to need it sooner rather than later. I'm not saying Michael's going anywhere. I'm just saying I think we need it sooner rather than later. But at the same time, I'm going to advocate, that we request the budget be adjusted. And I don't know if that needs to be an action item or a request or how that needs to work. I think if we hear from you, you want a line adjusted
We can put it in there, and the action will occur next month. And if we don't hear that consensus, and you make a motion, for example, if we were in July now, and Matt, you said, I like the budget, move approval, with the exception that we take whatever, 325,000 out of future projects and add it to the chamber line. And that motion passed, then that's what it would move forward. So I think, again, like when we talked about from a staff perspective, we're trying to accommodate where the board sees value.
So the only concern I have about the staff amount budgeted is that the position that we've budgeted for is probably not a position that we want to fill anymore. Because as we've discussed and acknowledged, the chamber's responsibilities, their agreement is going to carry some of the load that position normally would have carried. So could we get help with like a new, what that position, if it's more administrative based?
We think that this is at that level. In other words, in order to be a true economic development executive director, we think this number would have to go up by 50,000 plus benefits.
And I don't want to do that. That's what I'm
So
saying.
when we talk about an administrative type manager, we think that what's in there is probably appropriate.
So this number has that in there.
Have you done like a salary study to determine what it would take to fill that position with the, I'm not, like, part of the problem, I think, is that we don't understand what the description of the job looks like. We know that it's different than what has been budgeted and planned up to this point, but what are the responsibilities of this more administrative position, and what are the salary ranges of that similar position in comparable markets? That's personally, that's what I'd like to see. And if it's 80,000, great. If it's 200,000, we know. But I feel like we kind of need to know what it's going to take if we're going to make a staff change at some point. We got to know what that looks like, and have the money budgeted so that when we go out to fill that position, we've got the amount that we need for it.
I think what we're saying is based on internal equity issues, it's there. This is what you need.
Okay.
And that being said, the budget is always amendable. And so I think what Michael's saying is this is a good placeholder for this position, and in line with other lower level directors, as he mentioned before, this is what we would budget. But if you had something come back to you where you wanted to make that change, it's just an approval of a budget amendment, so.
So my question is, along those lines, then what is the communication with Daniel as far as what he's looking for in the job that he's looking to fill? If he thinks he's looking for a director, but we think we need an administrative person and we budgeted more for that, where's the communication line between us and him to give him direction, that he may not even want direction from us, to hire what we want instead of what he thinks he's looking for?
Okay, we're saying that the administrative position is a lower level director.
Okay.
So.
Does he know, does he?
Yes, he is on board with it,
pages?
absolutely.
Okay.
And that was one of our key conversations, was when the headhunter told us, you're gonna have to pay $175,000. We said, we just had a kind of a reaction to that, because we got the chamber that has all that expertise. Why do we have to go to the market for something we've already got?
Okay.
And so that conversation it resonated with both of us, that it's just, what we really need is somebody to handle the administrative stuff, to support the staff, to support the experts by keeping this organization moving, keeping the contracts up to date. And so we said, wow, that's the amount we had for the previous executive director. The market says you got to step up. We said, well, we think we think we're where we need to be, and we think that based on internal equity, that's where a lower level director ought to be
Okay, well, that answers my question, because in previous discussions, it's almost like, no, he's over here doing what he's doing, and we're over here saying, we want to do something else.
Very consistent. This last few minutes has been very consistent with our conversation. We feel like that expertise, we're paying for it in a chamber contract. This is administrative. And at this point, what he's saying is when the activity levels rise to a greater point, that's when we should think about making this change. And right now, I think he's thinking that probably through the rest of the calendar year, unless we see a dramatic increase in the projects that come from the chamber, or the projects that come out of business plan and development projects. If the project level stays somewhat consistent with where it is, we're probably good through the holidays with what we got, and take a fresh look at it in the new calendar year. I think that's kind of where he's thinking, but he is very much thinking about those activity levels.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the challenge that we have as a board is that the hiring authority has been given to somebody else. And so we have a position that's vacant. We don't want to fill it based on the role that has been defined for that position. Can we redefine that role as the administrative? Can you help us define the roles and responsibilities and title of the vacant position that we have, that you are currently serving as interim to fill?
I think we want, as an organization, we want somebody we call director or executive director, even if they're just administrative.
Okay. Can you help us define that role and provide us with maybe just an outline of what the roles and responsibilities of that position would be, so that we can approve the change in that position and their responsibilities?
Well, I think that authority lies with Daniel. So filling the position, I think the city services agreement says the city manager will staff in accordance with what he believes the needs are. So both the content of a job description and the fulfillment through hiring of that job description lies with the city manager. And so I would say, if there is something you desire as a board to get, or something you want to see me or my successor do, we should work that into the routine now. It doesn't take anything. Michael, we'd like to see you ride your bicycle every day to work. And which my doctor has said.
Make a motion.
I mean, they don't want to see it, but they want me to do it.
I'm not trying to get mired in the mud, and I understand that Daniel has the hiring authority, and we're not talking about trying to change that in this meeting. What I think I'd feel more comfortable with is just a more formalized process of an understanding between the board and the city manager of the vacant position's role going forward, so that, because it's not what it's been. You know, that's
You're right.
part of what
You're
we're
right.
talking about changing.
Well, how about this? Y'all are contemplating a change in the scope of services you receive from the chamber. I think it's absolutely appropriate to discuss that. In fact, Steve and I have had those discussions about we talked about data, the ability to analyze data and present it. What are the inputs necessary to facilitate that? So we've talked about those kind of things. If that moves forward, then why don't we take a look at what's left at that point? With the step up in the chamber activity, how does that reflect on what we're doing? I'm anticipating that we would have review of the chamber agreement and a new contract either teed up for the expiration of this term, or a new contract or an amended current contract in place within months. So with the completion of that, maybe we take a look at that time with what does that mean that the current staff expectations are? Does that?
Well, let me just if I can get the ball rolling, I'd like to ask if we can budget the $587,845 for the chamber contract for 26. that would be presented to us at the budget meeting next month.
Second.
Quick question. How many year, was this a several year new contract that we would be entering in with the chamber?
We can work that any way that the board.
I mean, I know we're amending our budget to reflect for whether that starts October or January 1, but I mean, is this a new contract that we're gonna be,
Yes.
it is, but how many year is it?
Well, the original one was what, 1 year with 2 extensions, so fairly short term, but with the extensions built in.
I think it would make sense to have a longer contract, so let's give some runway here for everybody to operate.
There are termination provisions in the contract, so if one party or the other gets unhappy, the likelihood of a straight termination is remote. More than likely, a contract change would result in an amended contract or the execution of a new contract on the heels of a terminated contract. So I think that as long as we've got that flexibility.
So a term wouldn't really be as relevant if we have.
I don't think so.
Termination of
Now, it was an issue 3 years ago, and my advice would be to consult with your city council member. Make sure that they are on board with what you're thinking, because ultimately they'll have to ratify whatever decision you make.
But that would be brought up, amending the contract can't be done now. That would be at a future agenda.
We can budget for it now and finish.
But we
that
can,
piece.
so that's what I'm advocating for, is let's budget for it now, and let's ask that be put on the July agenda. And between now and July, we can kind of figure out, is that a 1 year, is it a rolling 1 year, is it a 2 year? How does that look? And like you said, let's talk and make sure.
So do you want it for the full fiscal year or for the term expiring?
I would ask that we start it with the full fiscal year, starting October 1, and with the goal of getting a new agreement, whether we're you're amending the old one, but in reality, you're terminating the old one and you're coming up with a new one that would start October 1. And any of the new KPIs that are brought up, in other words, that's what I'm advocating.
I think it makes sense to do a new agreement, because I think the chamber did present like a amended scope of services and stuff, so I would be in favor of that.
That's what I would like, and that would give us a month to, if we've got any things to hash out, that gives the chamber time, everybody time and opportunity to work up what it might look like. That's what I would advocate for.
Right now, I'd suggest a 1 year contract with a 1 year extension based on input.
That'd be a good starting point.
And we will work on agenda items with an effective start date of 10/1. And we'll get into details between now and then. And if that's what this board would like, we'll try to work that out. I think with a start date of 10/1, that gives us plenty of time to go to city council and get that ratified.
Okay.
And Matt, what budget number are you looking at?
Taking the 262 and moving it up to 587,845.
Matt, would it make it?
Would it make sense, normally on a budget, proposed budget, on boards I've been on and organizations I've been on or businesses I've been on, you ask for the Cadillac sticker price, here's what I'd like, but what do I need? There's a difference. So, I understand, it's such a huge jump. We're talking about a budget with COSADC, $140,000, about regarding an executive director who's going to be an administrator and willing to jump more than double a budget for the chamber. And I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job. I would just like to look at it to see what is needed versus what they would want.
What's been requested.
I haven't said much, but I'll echo that. I guess based on the timeline, you're saying because we moved these meetings up to now the second Wednesday of the month as opposed to the fourth. So our timeline to get a budget sent to council, we now have a little more time.
That's right.
So
What's the time frame for getting it to the council?
Y'all's next meeting is July 9th, correct? And we will take enterprise funds to city council on July 15th.
So you're asking us to approve the budget for the October 1st fiscal year start?
You
July.
can do
Next
that at the
Monday.
next meeting if you're
Next
not ready
meeting.
to do it today.
You know, another
Good with
question
that?
I have is, and maybe I just don't understand the dynamics between the county, the city, and the chamber. You know, we're hoping for a $20,000 raise there, but coming and asking the city, the COSADC for $325,000. I just don't see the disconnect, and maybe there's just something that's proportional to what the county receives. But, you know, rising waters raises all boats. Why is the county not contributing more than, you know, anticipated or hoped $20,000 from 90 to 110? Maybe there's a good reason for it. I just don't know what that reason is today.
I think, in my opinion, the simple answer is we're the Economic Development Corporation.
I understand.
And they're running the business of the county. And, you know, it's not an argument. I'm just saying, in my simple mind, that's what we do. So,
And the other key element or difference is the county has one general revenue fund.
Come on up, Steve.
The county has one general revenue fund that so all the money they have comes out of one source, where this is a development corp where it's the asset sales tax. So it's a different dedicated fund. And you know, with any governmental entity, it's a challenge, you know, in terms of the ask, right? Because you know, especially with something like the county, I don't want to say we're taking money from some other place, but many times that's what's happening.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm kind of like you, Carlos. I mean, the county gets the benefits of all, and we get benefits of just what's in city limits. And so I'm kind of going down that same path. And then back to Travis's point, as far as we're essentially talking about a reorg here within the staffing. And so there's a lot to digest that I think we could digest in 30 days and potentially approve the chamber contract and amend, have the budget be the very next line item and do it all at once at the next meeting instead of jumping the gun. I'm not opposed to what you're saying. I'm not opposed to the dollar amount of the contract. I feel like there's
I'm just trying to figure out the chicken or the egg, how we get there.
There's just so many variables I think that this board needs to digest before we make any drastic.
Well, and I've been, you know, and I hear what Carlos is saying. It is a huge jump. I think what's missing is the chamber's been doing this work, and it's been, you know, the chamber membership has been subsidizing the work of the Economic Development Corporation, and we haven't been paying our fair share on that. And I think it's glaring how much we should be paying.
Sure.
To do the work of economic development. And I'm just saying it's time for us, and we should do that as well as, you know, we're budgeting for a position we haven't had filled in a couple of years. That money not spent still flows back into the future use, but it's just, I want to call it what it is and say it's time for us to step up to the lick log and pay what we're supposed to pay. And it'd be great if we could get the county to do more, but since we don't have that voting authority in here to advocate for them, I'd love for them to double what they're doing, you know. But we can't make that happen in this room unless you want to go talk to your elected official and advocate for that. But that's what this fund is for economic development. And so,
I would just kind of say, like, based on the current track record, the things we've talked about in the meetings over the year to date, the exciting things that are happening, like this, we've really got some momentum. And like, I think this is the time to kind of seize that. And I like the point Michael made. I think making this kind of jump, whatever kind of jump we make, we're obviously going to make a jump, whether it's the whole jump or a variation of that. But I would think it would preclude filling that unfilled position. In other words, I think we're outsourcing more of the administrative side to them. In other words, the scope of work is larger here. In turn, our demand should be higher for accountability. So, I think we're kind of restructuring a little bit, you know, the way the whole thing will work. And I mean, I love the direction it's going. I mean, everybody around this table, on the other end of this table, is, I think, doing an exceptional job. And like that unfilled position seems like it should stay unfilled, particularly if we do something like this.
That's kind of what I was saying. Essentially, it's a reorg. So if we decide to fill a position, does that reduce what we're needing from our
you know, I guess what I think about is the time to fill the position is whenever you're not in a crisis or a situation. You know, I don't know how long some of our employees are going to work before they retire. You would like to have someone on board that's an administrator or whatever the title is. You know,
For continuity.
a year or two before Michael, you decide to retire, Bob, you decide to retire. We need to have someone, you know, understanding where the bodies are buried and how this thing works, as opposed to someone announces in a year they're going to be retiring and now we're scrambling trying to find an administrator. I think it makes sense to go ahead and be looking for that type of person. It may take a year to find them. We need a good, strong bench. And yes, an empty position saves us money, but we're going to be out needing to fill that bench someday. Y'all aren't planning to work forever. I don't think any of us are, right?
Well, I think the key for anybody that succeeded me would be to have 2 years and listen to what the current staff says. That generally keeps me out of trouble. Sometimes they bait me with things, but generally with their experience, they've got pretty good advice, and so I think we'd be pretty good.
Well, looks like it's on an agenda for July 9th to hash it out.
I was gonna say, are you opposed to kind of tabling this?
Well,
essentially, and-
I'm fine. It's going to come up and then we'll make a motion to whatever we can come up with.
So what's it gonna take for us to reach a resolution? What additional information do you think we need to gather between now and then to hash this out and come to an agreement? Do we have everything we need?
Well, if you would, let me recite what I think we've heard for what we bring back to you. One, proposed new agreement with the chamber at the next meeting. And its effective date would be 10/1. It'd be a 1+1. For the budget should reflect that proposed contract. Leave the position in for now. And I think that's all we heard on the budget.
And if there needs to be amendments to that proposal, it could be done at that next meeting. You know, up or down, any negotiating.
Yeah, you just include it in your motion to make that change and we would.
All right.
The only thing is, again, Steve's talk about the TEDC membership. I think they have some mid-year conferences. If we discover that it'd be beneficial to have that membership immediately, and if we could share that, we might try something where if it's within my authority, if it's under 25,000, we might try to get that membership this year so that the TEDC participation could commence immediately.
Is that
how would you?
chamber contract?
I'm sorry.
Is that part of the chamber contract?
It
the
is
proposal?
not, but it would be, it's part of the basis for the increase in future years.
That's what I'm asking. The proposal that they've made includes that amount?
Yes.
Okay.
But if there is some benefit to getting that done next week so that they can participate, I know they've got some mid-year conferences, but I don't know when they are. And if there's some benefit, we might consider the city, the COSADC paying for a membership which would cover both, if you're open to that. If it's 20,000, that's within my authority, but that's pretty significant without support of the board.
Is there any specific reason why it needs to go through the chamber? Does it look better, or do we just take it on permanently?
You get, again, it's, name recognition and obviously having the key players involved with it on a regular basis. We just need to look at it. I'm not familiar with, if we could do a joint membership with it, but let us reach out to Aaron Demerson and have that conversation. And we can come back we have an answer within a week, I think.
Let's put that on the agenda too then,
Yeah.
Well, we might want to act before that next meeting, and so.
if we need to.
Okay, if it appears to be beneficial, I'll probably call, make sure that you're on board with it, that you feel like the board would be on board with it, even if it's within my authority. We don't want to do anything that,
I mean, I like the idea. I do also like the idea of some staff representation there as well. So however we can jointly do that would be ideal, if it's possible. Maybe there's a higher package we can,
Two lower packages.
right.
If I could, Steve, on that membership, would that be is that a membership that's going to say the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce, or is that just going to say San Angelo?
Again, Bob, that's a conversation we need to have with Aaron Emerson, how we could structure that. I'm sure they're open to that conversation, so we just need to have it. I've never done it that way before, but let's have that conversation.
So typically, you think it's typically the chamber, or
Well,
it's
it's
typically the development
so it'd
corporation?
be like the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, that, and that's the entity that actually does economic
I mean,
development.
technically, y'all are contracting for the
Yeah.
development corporation,
Yeah.
so no matter what you call it, it really is a development corporation membership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
we'll work it, see, if there's an easy answer, we'll try to make it happen. If it's not easy or difficult or doesn't yield benefit, then we'll let it lie.
So for clarification for this agenda item, we're going to put a placeholder to increase that marketing Chamber of Commerce line to bring back.
In line with whatever the agreement says.
And negotiate a new agreement.
Yeah, I don't think you're taking action today. I think we've got direction on what we need to do. We're gonna
Right.
bring back an action item that will reflect a new chamber agreement with that 10-1 start date at whatever we can negotiate in between then.
Okay, so we need to table the approval of the budget.
We can do that, yes.
I make a motion to table the approval of the budget to next meeting.
So we've got a motion from Director Shribling, second from Dr. Rodriguez to table this item.
Dr. Rodriguez.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
I'm not a doctor, but
I'm sorry, Director.
Director.
It could be. You're a doctor of many
JD.
things, just not a PhD, right? Sorry, JD. So we have a motion, we have a second to go ahead and table this item and bring back to this board with some of those adjustments on there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll go ahead and table that. And also with that, Michael, can we also bring back what a structure would look like? What that-
Staff?
Staff, correct.
Well, if you approve this budget, the structure is what it is.
Okay.
And I think that's a good place. If we get it, if Michael starts bringing us project after project and we need the money, we'll scrounge and we'll pull it out of there.
Because what I
But-
also don't want to lose sight of is we have existing staff. And so if the structure changes some and puts a little more responsibilities on staff, we need to,
Well, there's really not a change in the administrative part of it. The chamber will have a greater accountability reporting mechanism, and so they'll probably have a little more prominent role on the agenda. But as far as keeping the meetings going, following up with contract development and terms in those contracts, or that it'll have little effect on the current staff.
okay, thank you.
Michael, and this may go to you or Brandon, just looking at the old contract with the chamber, coming back to that, we allot 262,000, but it's not a line item as the proposed budget, correct? So they can use 262,000 as the chamber sees fit, correct?
I think our
Well,
contract
within the
is
scope
not.
of the contract, I mean, it has to be used for,
Right, I mean, that's right,
The defined scope.
as the defined schedule, correct, but
right.
how the dollars are spent within the defined schedule is.
It's at their discretion.
At their
Right.
discretion.
That is what I think is leading to a great question.
Well, because the proposed budget has more of a line item issue, the 500 and, what did I write down? 587,000, it's broken down in their proposed budget.
Would you like to specify that the contract include the allocation of those monies consistent with the proposal you've seen?
Well, I'd like to see where the money's going, for example, I don't want to micromanage, I just want to know for education purposes. You have staffing, they have proposed staffing $421,220. I'd like to look at what their current staffing payroll is and where those dollars are going, because it seems to be, because we can, based on this last contract, just give them allocate more money to the chamber, and within their defined scope, allocate that money as where they see the necessity is.
I think if I were a board member, I would ask for a line-by-line comparison of what are you currently doing?
That would work too, yes.
And what do you propose to do? And what is, based on the current allocation, how is your budget holding up? And then let's see what the new one looks like, and there's going to be differences in those lines. What's driving those differences, and what can we expect to see as an impact to the services?
Correct, and I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job. I'm not saying that they've not been effective. I just, as fiduciaries for this tax dollar, I'd like to know where the dollars are going and where the increases are going to be allocated to.
Does that sound doable?
I would agree. I think that would, to your question, I think that would answer all of the existing questions I have. So. Good.
Sorry.
No, that's great.
We'll ask the chamber to be prepared to present that at that next meeting, and we'll try to do our part in case the board is ready to move forward with an approval at the next meeting.
Thank you.
We have to be ready to move forward. You're talking about the contract.
I'm sorry.
You're talking about the contract.
The contract and the budget.
Yeah. We kind of need to finish those.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Consider approving resolution authorizing the termination of an economic development performance agreement by and between the City of San Angelo Development Corporation and Ethicon, Inc., dated July 1st, 2019, authorizing the board president to execute all related documents and recommending ratification by City Council. Presentation, Bob.
Well, everybody so far today has been talking about spending money. I'm going to try to give y'all some money back. How's that?
Great.
Good plan.
In 2019, COSADC entered into an agreement with Ethicon. It was basically for 3 phases of capital investment. It also included some job creation. And Ethicon performed all 3 phases according to their requirements. Unfortunately, the state stepped in 2024 and said that certain companies were not going to have to pay property tax or business personal property tax on certain types of medical equipment. So the agreement between COSADC and Ethicon was for a 75% rebate of their increase in personal property taxes resulting from those projects. As of 2024, their taxes actually went down drastically. So it basically took the meaning of the agreement. There is no longer an increase because they actually are paying less taxes now than they were, so there's nothing to rebate. So we're proposing that we go ahead and terminate that contract. And they've also way over exceeded their job creation. And they would have 1 more year of job reporting or job creation reporting. We're suggesting that we just go ahead and close out the contract and the requirement for the job creation reporting because they've already done it anyway. So we're proposing to just basically put together an amendment that would end this contract. But the board is party to it, so we need board approval to do that.
Ethicon's okay with it? I mean, they're in agreement. Ethicon is okay with this? There's no
Yes.
friction about this, right?
Yes. And that would put about $400,000 back in the future projects budget.
Move approval.
Second. More discussion on this? We've got a motion. We've got a second. Director Lewis and Director Lassiter, you got those? So we've got a motion, got a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move to closed session, executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Governments Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. Section 551.087, Business Prospect Negotiations regarding Rosenberger Site Solutions, Project Hyperspace, Project Gateway. It is 10:10. We'll move into executive session. Awesome. All right, it's 10:33. We'll come out of executive session, moving back into the regular session. Moving to 7A, consideration and possible, I'm sorry, we had no action coming out of executive session. Moving into number 7A, consideration and possible action of items discussed in closed session. There are none. Announcement and consideration of future agenda items. Kind of had a list of a few.
We do have a couple that we previously talked about. Another one that's kind of a past item that we haven't had any open meeting time on is the Brett policy. We had that teed up for the work session, and the work session was just jam-packed. So I'm anticipating we'll put that on a future agenda. And I would think that maybe we follow the chamber agreement with tailoring the Brett policy accordingly. Those two should be related. That might be a little bit getting the cart before the horse, but we should put into, if we're going to move the chamber contract along quickly, then we should put into that what we would want to do in the policy. Technically, we should do the policy first, but with the idea that we want to get that chamber contract put together so that we have the basis for a budget proposal, I can understand. I'm not worried about that at all. But we do need to bring that one back because we didn't get to it in the work session.
On the
We can try to get early on next week or next month's agenda and go from there.
Just for my understanding, is it, what kind of changes do you think that we need to consider to that policy? Or what are we looking at specifically?
Staff doesn't have any. What we brought was, we had a previous staff member's name in the policy, and we needed to change that to something else.
Okay.
But we had a board member.
Structure-wise, we don't really need to make any big changes.
No, we had a board member say, hey, I'd like to talk about that during our work session, and we just tried to conquer the whole world in a work session in half a day, and we just didn't have time. So we'd like to bring it back so that it can see the light of day in case there's something you want to see. Also,
before you leave that, I would like maybe the chamber to offer their input or advice on any changes if we're going to take it up.
Also, I'm not sure what bearing this might have on our future agenda, so I'll just say it, and then we can talk about what that impact that might have on future agenda. The city council is working through their budget process, and they have part of the first step for them is a strategic planning meeting. They're going to have that strategic planning meeting, I think, next week. Is that right, Tina? And there will be I'm not sure what the agenda is yet, but there will be a COSADC half-hour segment set aside. And I would really like to tee up, they're going to ask, what are our priorities, what do we need? The number one's going to be the renewal of the chamber contract. Mm-hmm. And so if you hear me talking about that before our next meeting, it's because I'm trying to pave the way for what it appears to be an ultimate approval of something similar to what we saw today. So I want that council to be aware that we're going to bring you a contract renewal, and we're going to need your support. And I want to stir that pot, get them thinking about it, get them talking about it. And I need that from y'all also. Talk to your individual council member, tell them what you're thinking and what your priorities are, and that will help smooth the way. That's what Tom pointed out to me. He said, make sure, remind them that once it comes to us, it's up or down. We can't adjust it. Sure. And so he said, we need that to come to us in a way that we can all get on board, or enough of us can get on board with it to pass it.
Sure.
So, but I don't think that changes what we do. I think we move ahead the way we've planned, and I'll try to have my conversation with Steve so that if I am on the agenda next week, I've got enough to talk about to say, this is what we need, this is what we're planning, and this is what we need you to do, council.
So we'll have the Brett policy, the chamber contract, the budget on future agenda items.
Mm-hmm. That's what I have down.
Okay. were there any other items?
Anything else?
There was you talked about the water, there was something on the water side that we were,
Water, water supply, water treatment. I think we could have an overview from Shane on that.
Let's keep building this up. Rick's back next month.
Shane's a pretty good communicator. He'll give us an overview.
Perfect.
There's more out there than we can afford to pay for. The question about where's the money coming from, it's coming from everywhere they can get it. You know, we're talking about hundreds of millions.
Perfect. All right, any other? Sure. Sure. Well, are we?
Isn't a discussion, I mean, unless there's a.
Future agenda.
Future agenda item, we really ought to limit it to that. Because we're getting, if it's not on the agenda, we're kind of maybe. Shopping. Okay, well, we're already kind of skewing.
Well, let's not skew anything. We can just wait.
Perfect. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
motion.
Motion
Second.
by Lassiter, second by Stribling. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
At 10:39.
Wait for Brandon to leave.